Moments ago, Israel launched Operation Rising Lion, a targeted military operation to roll back the Iranian threat to Israel's very survival. This operation will continue for as many days as it takes to remove this threat. For decades, the tyrants of Tehran have brazenly, openly called for Israel's destruction. They've backed up their genocidal rhetoric with a program to develop nuclear weapons. In recent years, Iran has produced enough highly enriched uranium for 9 atom bombs. 9. In recent months, Iran has taken steps that it has never taken before, steps to weaponize this enriched uranium. And if not stopped, Iran could produce a nuclear weapon in a very short time. It could be a year, it could be within a few months, less than a year. This is a clear and present danger to Israel's very survival.
Folks, I've been warning about this for a long time, and now, wow, you see these strikes there. Gary showing you a lot of the imagery coming just a very short period of time ago. This is in Tehran, and there has been substantial damage done to the Iranian regime. And listen, we gotta be very, very clear on this. And I want to make one point right away up front. Under no circumstances should the United States get involved with this at all. The initial comments coming out of the White House are that we didn't want this to happen. We tried to talk them out of doing it. Rubio has come out afterwards and said that that we're not part of this. There has been not rumors, but information that I have gotten from some other certain sources earlier tonight that the United States signaled ahead of time to Tehran that we were not going to be participating in this. We had nothing to do with it. And of course, gave them warning not to hit any American troops in the region, which they had claimed that they would do, or threatened rather, in the event of being attacked by the U.S. and Israel. Now that we've got to find out, what this is going to lead to, and I'll tell you up front, one of my biggest concerns is that Iran takes retaliatory action coming up soon. I doubt that they'll do it tonight. If the way they normally operate, they don't just fly off the handle. They don't immediately retaliate. They usually take a consensus of what happened. They calculate the damage that was done, and then they deliberate about what they're going to do in response. But because they have been relatively restrained in what they have done in the past, and they see that it doesn't prevent them from getting another hit here, because remember, in just the last 1 year, they've had their embassy in a foreign capital destroyed by Israel. They have had some of their senior leaders assassinated in other countries, even also some in Tehran. They've had a visiting dignitary assassinated in their capital city on the day of the presidential inauguration, etc. All kinds of provocative things. Iran has responded, but they have done so in measured and calculated ways to this point because they did not want to expand things. But now then, it depends upon how much damage has been done. We know that there's been some that's been quite severe, and you can see from those missiles falling, that something pretty significant was hit, and there's got to be some really solid damage that's been done. We also know some senior leaders have been assassinated as well. That was part of this operation here. I suspect that the most likely course of action this time is that Iran is going to take the gloves off. I can't say that for sure because they may still calculate that somehow they want to avoid a full-on war. But it's also very possible, I would go so far as to say probable, but I can't guarantee this is going to happen, that they're going to retaliate in some way that's very hard and that causes severe damage to Israel. My worry is that this may have been part of Israel's plan all along to prompt a big, strong response from Iran and then look to the United States and say, oh, please come and help us. We're too strong, we're too small to stand up to this. Please enter the war with us. If that happens, I'm just categorically saying now, the president of the United States must be firm and say, no, we're not going to do that. If you guys want to get into a war, that is your affair. You're a sovereign country. We don't recommend it. We wish you hadn't have done it, but you now have bought this. This is your deal. You have to take all the consequences. We will not. I mean, he must be categorical. And I hope to God that he comes out on national television in the next 12 hours and says, we will not get into a war with Iran. We will not do it. We don't have any treaty obligation with Israel. And even if we did, those obligations, like the Article 5 in NATO, say that if we're attacked, then we will consider an attack on one and an attack on all. But if any NATO member, for example, launches a preemptive strike of their own and attacks another country, and then they start getting fire in return, Article 5 doesn't apply there. So I don't want to hear any complaints from anybody in the United States that if Iran's retaliation turns out to be really painful, that they say that our treaty ally Israel needs our help. We have to come to their defense. I could almost wager big money that would happen. The president of the United States needs to say, no, we're not going to do that. We are not going to sunk ourselves into a war. We're not going to have our military people killed. We're not going to have our planes shot down. We're not going to have missiles striking our facilities all over the Middle East. Maybe our ships hit at sea. We're not going to do any of that stuff because Israel couldn't keep its mouth closed. Because Israel couldn't just leave well enough alone and have their look. Israel has nuclear weapons. Okay, if you're a nuclear power, you shouldn't be afraid of somebody that might someday have them. And you're going to see here in a minute. So Benjamin Netanyahu made the claim right there that that they could have been weeks or days or a year away. Okay. Other Israeli leaders are saying, oh, it was imminent. It was, in fact, I saw one report that someone forwarded me shortly that one official told an American official that it was 15 days away. They were 15 days away. That's why we had to act right now. Then there's other officials that said, well, no, it wasn't like Netanyahu said 9. He said they had 9 bombs available. Well, another one's going to say, and we'll see that soundbite here shortly, it was 15. Okay, which is it? Is it 15 or is it 9? You don't even know. You don't even know what the intelligence was that led you to war, so that when the aftermath happens at the highest level, you don't even have one story. And either it's what Netanyahu says, where it was later, it could have been within weeks or months, or maybe even a year. And then another official saying it was, 2 weeks. They were basically 2 weeks away from it. Which is it? Because they can't all be true. And more than likely, none of them are true. Listen, we've been showing you on this channel, you've had senior Israeli officials well back into the Biden administration that were just lusting to go after Iran. You saw Naftali Bennett many times came out and said, you know what, man, we got to go after the head of the octopus. Don't just go after the tentacles and all these different places. Let's go after the head of the octopus itself. And so they were wanting to go, and they were asked. I remember very clearly one of the clips we showed, Naftali Bennett was asked, what if the U.S. doesn't go? He said, well, then we'll have to do it on our own. Now, I remember saying at the time, and we'll repeat again here, that that's a bad idea if you do it on your own. But if you do it, you will be doing it on your own, because I pray that the U.S. doesn't get sucked in. Now, up to this point, President Trump has not done anything. It's not given in what they wanted to do. I think the reason why, I think we talked about in our show that we did, I guess it was yesterday or maybe earlier today. Sorry, time is all running together with me. We talked about how that the embassies had in Iraq had been given lots of information to Americans to start leaving the country. We sent out a tweet on that earlier and said, hey, it's getting very dangerous. The British did the same thing. So the evidence was clear. Clearly, we knew that something was coming. And you saw that President Trump said that we're not going to get involved with anything. You didn't see any movement of military power. So it's very clear that Netanyahu and Trump have probably been going back and forth with this for quite a long time. And Trump, to his credit, and I pray that he keeps doing this, and I will keep giving him credit, said, no, we're not going to fight with you. Because you got to know that Israel is begging the U.S. to join with them on this, whether it's refueling or more ammunition and weapons and long-range missiles, whatever. They wanted help. Plus, they wanted the backing of Uncle Sam over their shoulder, so they weren't be doing this on their own. Trump said no to that. That is why my big worry is that Israel said, okay, we'll see if we can draw you in there, because there has already been, and we're going to show some of these in a minute, there has already been a lot of overflowing people in the United States that are big-time pro-Israel that are cheering this on. Lindsey Graham is number 1 on that list. You've got Mark Levin. I haven't actually seen his X post, but I probably could have written it for him, that he was cheering on because he was condemning articles earlier in the day today that said that we should not fight on behalf of Israel a war that we don't need to. He literally condemned them. So I can only imagine he's cheerleading this on right now. We know that there's been reports here just within the last week to 10 days that Levin went to the White House to try to encourage Trump to do so. Well, he didn't. And I'm sure that Levin now is begging us to go and do that too. I wouldn't be surprised if he was sending private signals into Trump himself. And hopefully he continues to reject that. But I can just tell you right now, if there is a painful retaliation, those who cry from even within the U.S., from the Levins and from the Jack Keens and a whole slew of others are going to be screaming to not abandon our ally. And I'm just saying category, if I was the president of the United States, I would turn a deaf ear to every one of them. In fact, I would lecture every one of them. Whose country are you for? Whose country are you supposed to be a citizen of that you want our country to just literally hand our armed forces to somebody else to go use as they deem fit? That's what I would say to them if that outcome comes to pass. And I pray that it doesn't, because so far Trump has done the right thing. Look, and in fact, let's just get to, well, I'm sorry. Before I do that, let me tell you a little bit about what we know. That's some of the overarching things that are involved here. But what we've heard so far is that some of these first shots that you see, and I bet some of those that Gary was showing a minute ago were some of these. They started off with the suppression of enemy air defenses. It's called a SEED mission, where you try to take out military sites. I know some IRGC military sites were hit. For sure, some air defense systems were taken out. And based on the number of missiles that the camera is showing we're getting through there, it must have been pretty successful. So apparently the Iranian air defense systems were not that good, because, man, these things look like they all got through. Another thing is that Israel, this is definitely a broad-based campaign here. They're not just coming in and doing one or two hits, or not just going for the nuclear infrastructure. They're also going after high-ranking IRGC officials. So there is an assassination campaign that's actually a part of this. The Israeli media, and I just saw this just before I came on here, is openly admitting that was part of the plan here, this rising lion. There was some reports that there was a building, an entire apartment building, that collapsed inside of Tehran. So there was a number of apartment buildings that were hit, not by collateral damage, but by targeting, because they were actually trying to shoot this down, because there were apparently some of these high-ranking targets. And Netanyahu has also said that a lot of these were the scientists and the people that were running the civilian nuclear program, which he claims was actually a clandestine nuclear weapons program, et cetera. But they apparently killed a lot of people. Well, it appears, at least what's been reported so far, is that instead of just hitting like an apartment room or a building where somebody was, one of the buildings itself was destroyed. So who knows how many people were killed in that, how many innocent people. But we'll continue to follow that here also. Israel, though, claims, without providing any evidence, just statements, that Iran was up to 15 days away from having a nuclear bomb. Want to be seeing that intelligence here, but I don't, because it doesn't matter. They'll literally say anything they want, and they'll just say, well, it's classified, we can't tell you. Trust me. I don't trust you at all. And that's part of the pattern we've seen for the last 18, 19 months of their war in the Gaza Strip. They'll say whatever they want. Very often it's in direct contradiction with self-evidently observed facts to the contrary. They don't mind. They keep on going. In fact, Gary had that up there a second ago. One of those assassinated was the IRGC commander. So not just the nuclear program, but they also were going after the commanders. And I think that they're doing this because these are the same kinds of things that they did against the Hezbollah. Remember, they went after the head of Hezbollah and took him out, Nasrallah. And I think that they thought, okay, nothing happened between that. We took that guy out. There wasn't this big swarm of missiles coming back in our direction. So I think that they just said, yeah, let's keep doing that. So not just the nuclear team, but also the military team. And by the way, this is the same position that the Trump administration assassinated Soleimani, the guy's name was, in January 2020. So this is the second time. There was one guy in between, but this is the same position that now we've assassinated for a second time. It's their equivalent of the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, their highest general. Secretary Rubio came out with a statement after the attacks tonight. Gary, if you can throw that one up there. where he wants to make very clear our fingerprints aren't on this. We didn't have anything to do with this. And he's also warning against attacking any Americans in retaliation. He says, tonight, Israel took unilateral action against Iran. We are not involved in the strikes against Iran, and our top priority is protecting American forces in the region. Good on him for saying that. Israel advises that they believe this action was necessary for its self-defense. President Trump and the administration have taken all necessary steps to protect our forces and remain in close contact with our regional partners. Let me be clear, Iran should not target U.S. interests or personnel. Okay, well, I mean, that's pretty good. I mean, I'm glad to see that. He also didn't give any kind of ringing endorsement. He didn't say Iran had to do this. He said Israel, sorry. He didn't say Israel had to do it. He said Israel said that they needed to do it. And so that's kind of where we are right now. So you see very clearly that the administration's trying to take a hands-off approach here. Let me actually look at show you a couple of comments. I told you we have some coming up here. This is what Trump was asked earlier in the day, because especially in light of all these reports that some of our embassies had said some civilian personnel can leave. Don't go out because it's dangerous, and the British and all that. So he was asked at a press conference earlier today about what that meant.
Are you trying to talk Netanyahu out of doing that, or are you so against Iran having a nuclear weapon that you're okay, he does his thing because it is not an American war?
Yeah, it's a very fair question. Look, I want to have an agreement with Iran. We're fairly close to an agreement. We are fairly close to a pretty good agreement. It's got to be better than pretty good, though, but it's got to be, I'd much prefer an agreement. As long as I think there is an agreement, I don't want them going in, because I think that would blow it. Might help it, actually, but it also could blow it. But we've had very good discussions with Iran. Whether or not we get there, I can't tell you, but it'll happen soon. I say this, Peter, very strongly. They can't have, whether it's going in or not going in, they can't have a nuclear weapon. I'd prefer the more friendly path.
And can you tell us what the Israelis told you?
There's a chance of massive conflict. We have a lot of American people in this area, and I said, we got to tell them to get out, because something could happen soon. And I don't want to be the one that didn't give any warning and missiles are flying into their buildings. It's possible. So I had to do it. I had the choice. Do I do it or not? Doing it has its downside, but it also has its upside. Like, you're going to save a lot of lives if it should happen. Hopefully that doesn't happen.
Yeah, and and listen, Trump had been working to try and have a negotiated agreement with Iran, and had been making some progress. We told you, and I think the show we did yesterday, that Iran is willing to negotiate. They say they are willing to give on, or were, let me use the past tense now, were willing to give in on some big issues, some issues that they didn't want to, because they did not want war. They don't have a nuclear weapons program. Even our own intelligence services, all 18 of them, said that no, they don't have a nuclear weapons program. Yes, they were increasing their capacity, but no, they didn't have one. Ergo, you can't say we're going to go to war with somebody to keep them from having a nuclear weapons program when they don't have one. So that would have been kind of weird and illegal and unauthorized and all that kind of bad stuff. But Trump clearly knew that Israel wanted to do this. And so you could see he made a shift. And he says, all right, let's start going to some negotiated settlement. But then a midweek or so, he kind of changed the course, or about a half a week or so ago, and said there's a straight up red line. Iran cannot have any reprocessing capacity. Earlier on, and we showed you that clip earlier too, Steve Witkoff said they couldn't have anything above 3.67%. That was something that Iran could work with. But then he came under lots of pressure, the President Trump, the administration, no doubt from Israel, probably directly from Netanyahu, and then Trump changed it to a red line of 0%. Well, that's a red line for Iran, and they said so. They said if that's the deal, there won't be any negotiations, because we're not going to surrender. The Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty allows every country to have nuclear reprocessing, especially for energy power, whatever. Obviously, it's not for nuclear weapons, but they do have the ability to have it. So you can't say you can't have it, even though we are a signatory to the NPT. So it's illegal for us to do that. And we have a treaty that we signed that allows nations to have that. So we can't now change it because, well, what's different with Iran, we don't like them. Doesn't matter what you want to do. You can't do that. But we set in motion this dynamic to where Iran can't agree to that because they would basically be asked to completely surrender and disarm. And they weren't willing to do that. There's no question they wanted to keep that capacity as a hedge. So if in the future anything happened again, they could crank it back up and go up to nuclear weapons grade. That's not an unreasonable position for a country to have when they have been attacked as many times as they have by Israel. It's ironic that we talk about Iran being the number one exporter of terror in the region, and yet they have been on the receiving end of far more terrorist activity than they have ever given. And at the very worst, you could say it's a tit for tat kind of situation. There's no clean hands in this, folks. I don't care how many people love Israel or hate Israel or love Iran or whatever. Nobody's hands are clean. So don't be looking for a white hat here. Nobody has one on. Every nation's doing what it thinks it can for its own interest. And Israel has the definite power advantage over everybody in the Middle East, and that's why they were able to do this here. But we have to look out for our interests first, too, not Israel's. I mean, whether you're talking about our good allies like Germany or UK or Canada or Israel, our interests come before all of those, as it should be, as every one of their interests come before theirs. Before them too. They're going to go with their own national interests first. No one should be embarrassed about saying we're going to look out for our national interests first. And if you, our historic good friend, want to go down a war path that could get our people killed, we're out. We're out. And unfortunately, I gave President Trump credit for what he did so far, but he doesn't deserve credit for getting himself into this sticky situation here to where there was no way out, or else somebody was going to attack. Well, in a certain sense, Israel took him off the hot seat there because now he didn't have to make that choice because Israel has now made it for him. It remains to be seen until, look, and let me be clear on this, all this stuff is happening now within hours, and some of it may still be going on right now. So until the sun comes up and we get a better idea of what's going on, we don't know how much damage has been done, how far the Iranian nuclear facilities may have been damaged, how far it may have set the program back. We don't know any of that stuff yet right now. So all this is dynamic and at play. And you see that map there that Gary's throwing up there. That's where a lot of these facilities are. We don't even know how many for sure have been hit. So once we get more information on that, we'll do it. Let me go back to I mentioned earlier one of the IDF spokesmen. So listen to this comment here and compare it to what we showed you Netanyahu said at the top of the show.
You've been saying that the Iranians are very close to acquiring a nuclear weapon for years. Was there something specific, a specific piece of intelligence that you received that said this is it?
Yes, of course. We've been studying this. Israeli intelligence has been focused on this for years. And the assumption is that Iran is incredibly close to having 15 nuclear warheads. We know that they have the ballistic missiles. We have to remember, Iran, after October 7th, they threatened to strike Israel. They have ballistic missiles that also, even without a nuclear warhead, pose an existential threat to Israel. They said they were going to use them. And as we know, twice they shot a barrage of ballistic missiles. Can we imagine more than 1,000 ballistic missiles rained down on Israel? If it wasn't for our missile defense capabilities, this country would have already been destroyed. And we have a long history. We know when an enemy tells you they're going to destroy you, if you don't believe them, we don't want to have another Holocaust on our hands. And that is why, now that we have the ability, we carried out this preemptive strike.
Okay, let's start from right off the top. He was asked point blank, do you have intelligence that said this was something imminent? He said, yes, of course we do. We've been taking this for years. And then he said, I don't know if this was a slip of the tongue, but he said, and then the assumption is that they had enough for 15 warheads. Okay, Netanyahu said there were 9. He's saying that there were 15. He's claiming that there was hard intelligence. But then he said their assumption is that they were getting ready to make these nuclear warheads. You can't bomb somebody on an assumption. What that means is a guess. And what that really means is we don't really care what we find there. We want to attack these guys. That's what you need to understand here. Again, If this makes some people mad, I'm sorry about that, but we are unintimidated and uncompromised. This is the truth, folks. The evidence is overwhelming that this is the case here. President Trump has been trying to find any kind of negotiated settlement that he could, or at least he was getting close to it. And listen, there will also, Trump, one of the reasons he said that earlier today was they were in the process of negotiations. There were planned talks with Steve Witkoff, I think, in Tehran, and certainly with the Iranian regime, on this weekend, Saturday. They were supposed to meet together on Saturday, or maybe Saturday or Sunday. There was a plan in place. Well, that's certainly gone now. So now diplomacy's out the window, as everybody's going to wait to see what Iran does in retaliation here. But he mentioned there, number one, he said, there were 1,000 missiles flying against Iran, from Iran against us last year. There weren't. There were a number of drones that were fired, and then there was a handful of missiles that were fired, some of which got through. And he said, only our Iron Dome saved us. That's not true either, because most of those were out in the middle of the desert. They didn't do anything, and some of them actually did went right through the Iron Dome as a sign that we can penetrate your air defense if we want to. That message apparently fell on deaf ears, or at least they don't believe it. I don't know which. We're probably going to find out here in the next day or two. We'll see how that works out. But why? Why did Iran do that? Because he said all these missiles came flying at us and we have to act. Why did that happen? Well, the first batch came after you blew up their embassy in another country, and the second one came after you assassinated one of their invited guests to their presidential inauguration. Yes, the guy was from Hamas and somebody you didn't like. That doesn't give you the right to assassinate somebody in the capital city of another country. Do you want to set as a precedent that, yes, anybody who wants to assassinate somebody in Jerusalem when they're having some big festival because they don't like somebody's there, free to do it. We set the precedent. Or during the presidential in the United States inauguration, we want somebody from Mexico doesn't like somebody that's in the crowd there, or somebody from Argentina or something, and they assassinate somebody in Washington, D.C. Are you going to say, that's unfortunate, but, we said it's cool for Israel, so it's what's good for Israel is good for everybody else. You see that that's obvious. It's never going to work like that. We'll never tolerate that. But folks all over the world see this gross double standard, and it's not cost-free. This stuff costs us our reputation, our credibility, our ability to influence people in a positive direction, our ability to restrain people from doing things that are bad, or encouraging them to do something that's good. When they see that us and our allies are driven purely by power dynamics, right and wrong don't even enter the equation, only words are spoken to give cover to the power dynamics. That works on domestic audiences because they like to hear that. It doesn't work on international audiences. It doesn't work on potential adversaries of ours. They look at us with then more contempt, anger, and hatred. And that undermines our interest around the world. And if you work away and fray that fabric enough, one day, folks, that fabric could tear or break on a day you need it to be in place. And that's one of the things I worry about. I'm always looking deep on this, and I worry about what's the ramifications of these things are. Right now, we have the power dynamics. Israel has them. They can continue to do what they want. We'll see how much longer that lasts, though, because as I've been saying, Iran has a lot of capacity. They can hurt Israel, and they can hurt them bad if they choose to use their weapons. And I'm curious as to what their discussions are going to be inside Tehran, because they saw what happened with the alleged 150,000 rockets and missiles that Hezbollah had. They never used them. And then Nasrallah was assassinated and blown up in Beirut. They never used them. Israel never paid a price for that. I would wager that there's going to be those in Tehran that say, we can't go down that path anymore. There's no reason to restrain because it'll just invite more attacks. I suspect that we're going to get more of them out of this. Now, that was the Israeli spokesman. You would expect him to say that. Well, unfortunately, there's those in the United States, as I mentioned earlier, who are big cheerleaders of this. And one of the first ones, no surprise here, former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo.
They had little option. The time was running out. A nuclear conflict in the region would have been devastating, not only for the Israelis, but for American interests, for the Gulf Arab states as well. The last few days, there's been this reporting that they might do this. I'm sure the Iranians were preparing, and so I think the Israelis said, it's go time. We must do this to protect the sovereign nation of Israel. It's a righteous strike that they have taken. It's going to take them days to actually accomplish the mission of deterring this program and setting this program back by years. I'm confident that they can do that. And all nations who have been attacked by Iran, including the Americans, has an obligation to get this right and provide whatever assistance Israel needs so that it can conduct the attacks to complete this mission and put their nuclear weapons program back decades, if not forever.
No, 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 no. We do not have an obligation to give Israel everything it needs to go take on a war that we didn't want. Our president said that's not something that's in our interest, and they're trying to find a negotiated way out of it. And whether he did a good job with the negotiations or not, that is right. It is not our fight. The Iranian regime has been in power since 1979. They have been saying this, chanting death to Israel, death to America, whatever, is like a pejorative. It's an insult to us. They obviously have never made any attempt to make good on it. And this idea that if they even, let's just look at this for a minute, if they even got nuclear weapons, the claim is that they would immediately use them. I've shown several sound bites for many senior Israeli and American officials, past and current at the time. They've said that. That is nonsense. Everything that you can see, measure, and observe of the Iranian regime is that they want to live. They want to preserve their power. The last thing they're going to do is, having stayed in power since 1979, built up all this capability that they have, get a nuclear bomb and then commit suicide with it. Because that's what would happen. If they used it the way Israel claims, then it would be instant suicide. Israel by itself, without any help from America, has allegedly somewhere between 100 and 200 nuclear weapons of their own. So they would be able to pulverize anything that Iran does, and Iran is fully aware of that. They know that for sure. Ergo, they would never use it. So their actions show they would not use a nuclear weapon. And many people have been surprised that they haven't done the testing up to this point, or they haven't gone over that threshold in order to have a deterrent to hold Israel at bay. Because if they had a nuclear weapon, then these probably wouldn't have been hit like this, because they would have had a nuclear return. So my biggest concern about this whole thing, which I've been talking about for over a year, is that if we claim they want to prevent them from having a nuclear weapon, this is the best way to push them to get one. Now then, you've taken away any reason they have to withhold anything, because now in the aftermath of this, it's very unlikely that the IAEA inspectors, who had limited access, but they still had it, is going to have it anymore. I suspect strongly they'll all be kicked out. And now we'll have no eyes. We'll have no inside information at all about what they're doing. And we don't know how much of this, their capacity, nuclear making capacity, has been damaged or destroyed by this. But we also have to expect that probably in some of these very deep underground bunkers, they probably had all kinds of things stored there in just such a case as this. That if it was me anyway, just rationally speaking, and I knew the threat from outside, I would have made sure that my underground bunkers were capable of getting over that last hurdle and developing a bomb in the event that I got hit, so that if they did hit me, they wouldn't be able to get to that part. We'll see whether Iran did that or not. We'll see whether the assassination of these scientists, we'll see what that had to do. I don't know, but that is my biggest concern, absolutely biggest concern, because if all of a sudden one of these days we're all sitting here just having a normal day, and all of a sudden the Geiger counter starts tickering over here, or we get this evidence of looks like an earthquake in the Middle East, whoops, it's actually got the signature that was an underground nuclear test. Iran is now a member of the nuclear force. Congratulations. Well done, Israel. Thanks for pushing them over that threshold. You claim that you're doing all this stuff like Pompeo just said. It's this righteous act, and it's going to set them back. You just hope it set them back. You don't know that it's going to. We also don't know what they're going to do, even with their ballistic missile force here. But, there's some other issues involved here. What is China going to do? So I checked just before we came on the air. So far, there's no official comment from anybody in China. What is Russia going to do? No comment from Russia either. But they are all BRICS members. And it seems unlikely to me that China and Russia, after having brought Iran into the BRICS, are just going to say, bummer, they got blown up, and then take no action here, because then that's going to make them look weak too, even to other BRICS and other members of the global South. I would wager that they're going to do something in return. I don't know what, but it seems pretty unlikely to me that they're just going to shrug their shoulders and say, bummer. So that remains to be seen as well. Maybe they don't do anything overtly, but they certainly could do things covertly. And it just is not in their interest to turn a blind eye. So we'll see where that ends up going as well. You have obviously the issue of retaliation. What is Iran going to do? The idea that they're just going to take this in the teeth and just roll back up and crawl back into a hole and do nothing seems pretty unlikely. And we've shown you, we had Ted Postal on our show after the missile strikes in 2024 that Iran fired in there. And he showed you very graphically that the Iron Dome didn't stop their best ballistic missiles. They can fire them into very prominent targets in Israel, and there's probably nothing they can do. In fact, those images that Gary showed at the top of the show about the Israeli missiles that were going in almost looked indistinguishable from the Iranian missiles that penetrated the Israeli system last year. I mean, it really, for a second, I thought that was the replay of the previous one, but you see, those are definitely the new ones from tonight. And then, my second biggest concern is the United States getting sucked into a war. That whatever the retaliation comes in from Iran, if it's something that's really painful and Israel looks to us and says, oh, please help, we can't do it, we're not strong enough. And look at all this damage. And you've got all the Pompeos, the Lindsey Grahams, the Mark Levins, all these folks that are going to be begging and screaming on television and on their social media platform, please come to this. Don't leave our ally there to flap in the wind. They're in a war for their lives. It's existential. They'll throw in the Holocaust. They'll say all kinds of things. And I'm saying, no, Israel has said it's the strongest country in the region, and that it is strong enough to take care of itself. It took this action. It brought this on to itself here, and it has to pay the consequences, because it's not even just a matter of doing the right thing, folks. This is a matter of protecting American national interests. Let me just categorically tell you, I will not sacrifice the life of one American military member that, unfortunately, there are thousands of them in the Middle East that are very vulnerable tonight, if we get sucked into this war. Because if we do, they'll all be in the crosshairs. They'll all be at risk of being attacked. And a great portion of those are defenseless against some of the best Iranian ballistic missiles. Don't find out. So that's where we are right here. And I'm going to leave you with this last thing, because it's kind of aggravated me a little bit more than anything else. And that's Benjamin Netanyahu. He made one other statement we didn't show in that first clip. Check this out.
As the Bible teaches us, when someone comes to kill you, rise and act first. This is exactly what Israel has done today. We have risen like lions to defend ourselves. Over 3,000 years ago, Moses gave the people of Israel a message that has steeled their resolve ever since. Be strong and courageous, he said. Today, our strong and courageous soldiers and people stand together to defend ourselves against those who seek our destruction. And by defending ourselves, we defend many others, and we roll back a murderous tyranny. Generations from now, history will record that our generation stood its ground, acted in time, and secured our common future.
Okay, let me just tell you right off the top, I am a Bible-believing Christian. I read my Bible literally every day. I start my day off with it every day. I have never read anything remotely close to, if your enemy's coming to kill you, rise and kill them first. I don't know what Bible he's talking about. If he's talking about something in the Torah or in the Talmud or something, some Israeli text, I don't know. I don't read those. I can't say. But he chose the word Bible. And you know that to target a lot of his commentary are American evangelicals. And I hope that they know their Bible better, because our Bible actually teaches the opposite. It says, do not return evil for evil, but return good for evil. All that kind of stuff. Now, let me be clear. The Bible definitely doesn't teach just roll over and let someone attack you either. It says that's why we have governance. This is the government. It's not for no reason that the government has a sword to defend itself. That's one of the God-given reasons to defend itself. This does not qualify for that, because the Israelis didn't defend themselves from Iran. Iran didn't attack Israel. Iran wasn't preparing to attack Israel. Israel had this war of choice that they have started with Iran. They started it because they were impatient, because they didn't want to wait for diplomacy. They didn't want diplomacy to work. They just wanted to destroy Iran. And now they're trying to use biblical texts to cover it over. And unfortunately, it's going to work for many in America. That makes me sad as a fellow Christian. It's going to make me sad that many people are going to cheer this on, and they're going to cite the Bible and they don't even know what's in it. But that's another story for another night. We'll talk about that. But I think Netanyahu is right about one thing. History will judge this, and this history will look back on this. Not quite in the way that he's thinking, though, because like I warned in the first week of their Israeli attack into Gaza in 2023, I said Netanyahu has put his government on a path to achieve by military power the political objective of bringing peace to Israel, and he will bring the opposite. I said he will not destroy Hamas. He will end up creating even more enemies, and that is precisely what happens. And now he has an issue that, whatever it is, 19, 20 months now going on, and they still have no end in sight. And they still have somewhere around 2 million people that are trapped in like animals in a pen that barely get enough food and water to exist. And you can't keep going down that path much longer. That has not brought peace and prosperity to Israel because it hasn't solved any problems. It has made it profoundly worse. Now then, he has started something here that he does not have the power to finish by himself unless he's lucky and Iran literally rolls over and just says, okay, I'm sorry, we'll go home and we'll never talk to you again. That seems incredibly unlikely. But that's almost the only case that this can have any kind of a positive. And even then, it's going to be a temporary one. I assure you, the Persian people don't forget. They don't just roll over and say, all right, we're never going to do anything about this. They may bide their time. They may build up their power, but I guarantee you, they will not be silent. Can you imagine? Just work with me on this one. It's 9/11. The United States has just been hit. The Twin Towers have been knocked down. The Pentagon was hit. Plane crash in Pennsylvania. And President Bush comes out and says, well, you know what? I mean, bin Laden did warn us that he said that we should have left the Middle East. So, all right, we're gonna just roll up. We're gonna bring our troops out of Saudi Arabia, bring them back from Kuwait and all that, and we're just gonna live in peace from that. Is that what happened? Or did something rather different happen? So tell me, rationally speaking, with human beings involved, do we think that Iran and the Persian people are going to do what we would never under any circumstances in our existence do? And why do you think that Israel is going to have success? I think the almost certainty, and you can never be totally guaranteed in human affairs, but I think that it is profoundly likely that Netanyahu has just dug more trouble in for his country, because if Iran starts firing back and they just say, all right, it's a war now, we're on. This wasn't just a strike. This is war. And now then they have said, we're going to fight to the death. And we're just going to continue on. We're no longer going to be cowering and we're not going to be measured. We're just into a war. Now what's Israel going to do? That's the big problem here. We'll see how it works out here. But Netanyahu doesn't appear to have a plan B. He doesn't even appear to have a plan A. It seems to me like he just has, let's start it and see what happens. And the likelihood is this is going to be really bad for the Israeli people, because there's probably something pretty bad going to be coming back from Iran pretty soon. We'll have to wait and see how it happens. We just have to hope that the United States does not increase the problem by getting involved in it and getting us involved in a war that we have no business of fighting. That's what you need to understand. Now, we're going to continue to cover this stuff as time goes on naturally. We'll give you updates. I'm sure we'll do another one in the morning. But that's what we know right now, folks. We just wanted to bring it to you because no matter what shakes out and what we find out, the bottom line is America needs to stay out of this war. Thank you very much. We really appreciate you. And by the way, I've noticed that a number of you have been very kind and generous and saying good things about us and the work we do, and have been generous with some contributions. Really appreciate that. We notice every one of you. Thank you very much. And we will look forward to seeing you on the next episode of the Daniel Davis Deep Dive.